All right, let's just jump straight in. We're going to look at 5 specific spots where China is, well, really pushing the boundaries. Literally, it's creating this sort of ring of instability all across the Indo-Pacific.
And yeah, that's really the core idea we're going to unpack here. We're talking about everything from contested oceans to icy mountain peaks and even a massive river. We'll map out how these friction points, which seem separate, are actually all connected.
So, first up, let's head out to sea. Our first couple of danger zones are these huge maritime disputes, and believe me, they are completely changing the strategic game in the whole region. Okay, so our first stop, the massive South China Sea. And you know, this isn't some simple single conflict. It's more like a tangled mess of overlapping claims, all focused on these supercritical areas like the Spratly and Paracel Islands. And this is where it gets really interesting. You've got a bunch of countries with claims, right? But the real heart of the conflict is China's massive 9-line claim, basically saying almost the entire sea is theirs. Back in 2016, an international court said, nope, that's not valid. But Beijing's response? They just ignored it. And since then, they've only doubled down on trying to control the area. So how exactly are they doing it? Well, it's pretty clever, in a way. Instead of just rolling in with warships, which would be a huge escalation, China uses what people call gray zone tactics. Think of it like this. The first wave isn't the army, it's the China Coast Guard. Or sometimes it's just massive fleets of fishing boats that are, let's just say, more than just fishing boats. The real Navy? They just hang back, providing backup. It's a way to push their claims without ever officially starting a war.
All right, let's head a bit north to our next hotspot. We're talking about a small chain of islands, but don't let their size fool you. They're at the center of a huge amount of tension between 2 of Asia's biggest players.
This one's between China and Japan, over what Japan calls the Senkaku Islands and China calls the Diaoyu Islands. And the strategy here is totally different. It's a slow burn, a war of attrition, really. Chinese ships are constantly sailing into waters that Japan controls. They do it so often that it starts to feel, well, normal. And that's the whole point, to change the facts on the water, to create a new reality where their presence is just accepted. Now, check out how different countries are reacting to all this. If you look at the Philippines, their government is taking a much tougher stance. But it's not just the government. You've also got civilian groups, NGOs, out there actively tracking and publicizing what's happening. Japan's approach? It's much more traditional, much more state-on-state. They're beefing up their military and tightening that all-important alliance with the U.S. Okay, we're leaving the water now and heading for land and air. And honestly, these next 2 spots are probably some of the most dangerous potential flashpoints anywhere in the world.
Danger zone number 3, the Taiwan Strait. And let's be clear, this is so much more than just a territorial dispute. What we're seeing here is relentless and frankly escalating military pressure aimed directly at a democratically run island.
And there's this predictable, almost scary cycle that keeps happening. Whenever Taiwan does something on the world stage, deepens its relationship with the US or any other democratic partner, Beijing's response is almost immediate, huge military exercises. And we're not talking about just a few ships sailing around. These are full-on simulations of a complete blockade of Taiwan.
And you really have to grasp the sheer scale of this pressure. It's not just a couple of jets buzzing the island. We are talking about a full-spectrum campaign. You've got the Air Force, the Navy, a really powerful rocket force that has missiles designed to take out ships and targets on land, and on top of all that, a constant barrage of cyber attacks and disinformation. The whole shebang.
Okay, let's shift gears and head way out west, all the way up to the roof of the world. Danger zone number 4 is this incredibly tense friction point high up in the Himalayas, right along this blurry, ill-defined border they call the line of actual control. So the problem, at its core, is a border that was never properly drawn, and it's been a source of tension for decades. But everything changed in 2020. There was this deadly, brutal clash in the Galwan Valley. That one incident just shattered any kind of uneasy peace that existed. Now both sides have tens of thousands of troops and heavy weapons permanently stationed up there.
And you've got to understand, when you're fighting at that altitude, logistics are everything. So what's happening now is this frantic infrastructure race. Both China and India are building roads, bridges, high-altitude airfields like crazy. Because in that kind of terrain, winning isn't just about who has more soldiers. It's about who can supply them better and move them faster.
All right, for our last danger zone, we're changing lanes completely. This one isn't about soldiers or territory in the way you might think.
This one is all about power over a resource that nobody can live without, water.
We're talking about the Mekong River. For millions of people in Southeast Asia, it is an absolute lifeline. But here's the thing. China controls the headwaters, the source, where they call it the Langkong. And by building a whole series of massive dams up there, they've basically got their hand on the faucet for every single country downstream.
And look, this isn't some abstract environmental debate. Having control over that water flow creates huge, real-world risks for millions of people. We're talking about their food security, their economies. In places like Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, entire communities depend on the natural rhythm of that river to fish and to farm.
So who are the boots on the ground in this conflict? Well, that's what's so different here. It's not the army. The real power players are these massive state-owned corporations, the companies building the dams and running the hydropower plants. And a huge source of anxiety for the downstream countries is that they have no idea when China is going to release water or how much. There's just a total lack of transparency.
Okay, so we've walked through these 5 hotspots, in the sea, in the air, on land, and even over a river. Now let's pull back and look at the bigger picture. What's the system behind all this? And more importantly, what could happen next?
And a huge piece of this puzzle is the way power works in China right now. It's incredibly centralized, all focused on one leader, Xi Jinping. Now, on one hand, that lets them make big, bold moves on the world stage really quickly, but it's a double-edged sword. The big risk is miscalculation. When all the information flows to one place and nobody wants to deliver bad news, it's easy to make a huge mistake. So what does the near future hold? Well, experts basically see 3 possible paths over the next few years. Path number 1, and the most likely, is sustain. Basically more of the same. Keep the pressure on everywhere, but try not to start a full-blown war. Path 2 is friction, and this one's more dangerous. The idea is that if things get tough at home, the government might get more aggressive abroad to distract people. And then there's path 3, internal adjustment, where they decide to soften their approach. But honestly, that's seen as the least likely of the 3.
So, what should you actually be watching for? This is the practical takeaway. Keep an eye out for news about the maritime militia. Pay attention to new Chinese Coast Guard laws. Look for reports on PLA deployments. Are they sharing data on the Mekong dams? How fast are those roads in the Himalayas being built? These aren't just random headlines. They are the actual indicators that tell you which way the wind is blowing.
And all of this brings us to one big, final question. Every single one of these conflicts is happening in this gray zone. It's this carefully managed space designed to push boundaries and achieve goals without ever triggering an all-out war. It's a strategy of constant, simmering pressure. But you have to wonder, how long can you keep that up? How long can that incredibly tense and dangerous balancing act possibly hold?